Carrie Twigg, we're back at it.
Back, bro.
We're back at it. You are an evacuee as we speak.
Yeah,
Um, look,
man.
looking very cozy in New York.
Yeah, I came to New York, stay in a friend's house, friend's amazing house. And yeah, man, it was a really gnarly week in Southern California. I live like 3 blocks south of the evacuation line for the Palisades fire. And basically starting on Tuesday or Wednesday, the wind was so intense. I was waking up in the middle of the night and like could hear things banging around on the roof of my building. And then the fire started, and a lot of my neighbors are like local Angelinos and have been in California for 30, 40 years. And so they were like, yeah, Santa Ana winds means fire. There's probably going to be a
Yeah.
fire. And then very quickly, it was just sort of the worst thing that anyone had seen. And so by Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, it was starting to like come into focus just how catastrophic it was going to be. I kept going out I live right on the beach. And so I kept going out to the beach to like get a better perspective and thinking that seeing
Yeah.
it would make it feel more like reasonable to me. And it was actually just absolutely terrifying. You could see like the ridge, the fire line, and my neighbors are firefighters, and
That's right.
yeah, which actually was really great in a lot of ways because it
Yeah.
we were getting a lot of information around like how the wind, like what was happening, and should we evacuate, because so often it's like these things are so volatile that even though the city is giving you information, you have like your parents, your friends, the news, like so much input, so many people are like freaking out, and there's so much
Yeah.
anxiety in the city. So having a firefighter who was like in the mix I could talk to was really actually really nice. And his wife or partner and I sort of rode our bikes up to where the firefighter base camp was a couple times and like brought
Wow.
coffee, and Jose Andres was there, and President Biden, who was randomly in town, sent a bunch of food trucks. So like they were really well kitted out. But yeah, it's been really harrowing, and there's just going to be so many people who, this is gonna not only emotionally and psychologically scar them, but are going to be financially devastated for, a decade. Like it just can't be overstated how bad it is.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. I think it's hard. I'm in LA a lot, but I think it's hard to process. I think the image that terrified me was the comparison of the island of Manhattan to the depth and breadth of the fire. And it was like, it was shocking. The devastation was shocking seeing the aerial images. And how do you, I mean, I don't even know where to begin. I guess maybe just on the personal level, how are you feeling? You're in Santa Monica, which is so close to the fire. I was just looking at the app. Um, how are you processing and feeling? I know that I have personal friends who have already been affected by this, but um, just for those that have maybe never dealt with something like this, how are you processing it, Twig?
I mean, it actually just like wasn't until I got to New York. And then it all sort of like the
Yeah,
tears and the stress of it all kind of
yeah,
started moving a little bit, because it is an active crisis. Like no one in LA is unaffected. Like
yeah,
there's just, even if you
yeah,
haven't had to evacuate, even if your house is still standing, like you're not unaffected. The air is smoky. There's ash everywhere. Someone on the other part of town. So many people I know have lost everything that they own. Um, and it is, to your point, I think, I'm from Ohio. I lived the majority of my life on the East Coast.
yeah,
It's hard to even reconcile like the scale of the West, right? Like
yeah,
the size of California, the size of LA, the scale of these places are so much like orders of magnitude bigger than the East Coast of the United States, that it's just kind of difficult to even reconcile how much land we're talking about, the scale and the size of these things. And so when you're there and you're in it, you almost can't process it. It's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
devastating and it's so harrowing, and you're in this like immediate danger that I think your nervous system like literally won't. It's like, hey, stay focused, stay in the present, like don't reflect on anything. We'll do that later. Right now,
Right.
figure out what you have to do in the immediate short term.
So what can people do? I mean, well, first off, I just want to say, um, it's been, man, what a banger of a first couple of weeks of 2025.
I
Let's
think
just
that's
say
what
that.
Newsom said.
Yeah,
That's
what a
what
banger.
Newsom.
Um, the outpouring of love and support and organizing, it's it's been pretty incredible to see. Again, it's so sad to see just the spreadsheets of GoFundMe pages and families who've lost everything. But community by community, uh, a number of communities I'll just flag is Harness, which is just doing incredible work. Individuals and organizations that typically don't do this kind of relief or community organizing are like using their political organizing hats and skill sets um, to organize their communities to assist and to help. There's been, I mean, this is where social media is beautiful. Like the number of videos that I'm seeing of, there's this beautiful video of migrant workers organizing their community. There's this beautiful video of indigenous leaders coming together and just doing everything that they can. But how do you think people can most help right now, Twig? Because I think that, people just never know. It's like donating to a GoFundMe, Red Cross. I've seen my friends who are animal lovers. I've seen really incredible volunteer work happening at animal shelters. There's been so many pets that don't have homes right now. So however you could sort of contribute, I think that there is a way to help. I'll put it that way. If you're in the LA area, and even if you're not, there's a way to donate and to support some of these organizations on the ground.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it's like whatever you feel comfortable with, whether it is those individual GoFundMe pages or
Yeah.
things like the California Foundation, and like there's so many, the Firefighters Benevolence Fund, the Firefighter LAFD directly. Like there's so many things that there's no shortage of options if money is something that you're able to contribute. But I also think that there's a broader conversation, and you never want to have it too soon after a crisis, but also there's just a broader conversation about the politics of this whole thing. Um, and taking very seriously that, yes, this is a natural disaster, and there's only so much we can do about the fact that there's 100-mile-per-hour Santa Ana winds that are an annual wind phenomenon that are always hot and dry and create a recipe for fire. And yet LA started running out of water, right?
Yeah.
Like there are also like municipal political realities that have come to bear in all of this. And sort of as I've been watching a lot of the commentary, like the fact that there's political leaders who are justifying maybe not helping California because like it's a Democratic run state is absolutely appalling. And it's just like we have to do a better job across the board of electing people who take seriously solving problems before they become catastrophes. It's
Yeah.
not as though California has not known for a very long time that it was at risk of a
Yes.
devastating, catastrophic wildfire. It is not as though the insurance companies haven't known that and haven't been,
Yes.
and where was the protection for before they canceled policies? So I'm also, so yes, there's the immediate short term direct aid to people who are being impacted. And I think there's a broader zoom out around what kind of civic leadership we're willing to tolerate. Like this is just
Yeah.
ridiculous. There's I think it was a senator from Tennessee who was talking shit about California. And it's like, California, do you know the social programs that California pays for? Tennessee, like California
Yeah.
and its residents are the number one contributor to the federal budget. And so everyone's highways, everyone's schools, everyone's bridges,
Yes.
everyone's like the vast majority of that cash is coming. We are the single largest contributor to the programs that help all Americans. And so the idea that there would be some sort of that we've allowed California as an entire entity to become politicized in this way, and for that to show up in a generational catastrophe is so appalling and something that I think deserves a lot of scrutiny in this moment.
Yes. And I believe there's a congressman from your home state who, I kid you not, proposed that there not be any federal aid given until the fires are under control. Like,
Was, was who,
just,
Jim Jordan?
yeah, I think it was Jim. It's like just the audacity,
Yeah.
but also the ignorance of not understanding that there's nothing that could have prevented this from happening. Yes, there was a lot, to your point. There's a lot that could have happened. And this is why it's so heartbreaking, right? Like, Twig, you and I are always talking about, like, how do we get everyday people engaged on why civic and public service and local government and state government, why this shit matters. Um, I don't want to get into, or maybe you do. I don't know that I want to get into the local politics of it all. There's already calls for Karen Bass to be recalled.
Oh,
There
she's gonna get
has
recalled. She's in trouble.
She's in trouble.
She's gonna have a
Yeah,
really, really hard time. And I don't know how fair that is, to be perfectly honest.
sure.
She had a really tough race to begin with. She had a very tough primary to begin with.
Yeah,
So it's not as though she's some like beloved and universally approved of civic leader in LA. There's a lot of misinformation going on around like budget cuts. And it's true
yes,
that there was allocated, like different budgets were allocated to the firemen or out of the firemen's budget. And I'm not saying that she's right, but at the same time, I was talking to firefighters at the scene. Sorry if you can hear the dog barking. But I was talking to
I
fire.
love it. I love a dog barking in the background. Let's go.
Um,
My
but I was
dog is
talking.
sleeping.
Oh, that's so
That could be
nice. Yeah,
that one.
Jake's going bananas. But I was talking to firefighters at the scene and they were like, listen, it's not even, first of all, they had been prepared for this. So like they knew there was going to be fire. They didn't know it was going to be this bad and they didn't know it was going to erupt in this particular way, but they knew that there was going to be fire. Um, and so they had been stationing sandbags and trucks and they'd been calling in extra personnel days before the fires even started. So they were
Yeah,
anticipating that there was going to be an event and they were prepared for it. One of the issues that they were having was that even though they had enough manpower, and they still do, they like have enough human power to control the things, they don't have enough equipment. So like they
yeah,
have like 30 broken rigs across the city that they can't even deploy because they haven't had the budgets to have them fixed. And that is a longer term issue that predates Karen Bass, but
yes,
also is just been exacerbated by the fact that we as a reflexive, like as an American kind of horrible habit that we have and we see across the country. We don't, the same with healthcare. It's like we wait till
yeah,
there's a problem. Our entire
that's right.
system is designed to be responsive to problems and not to be proactive. And so there's all sorts of things. There's been a study done in California that based on the size, the population growth of LA, the current building, that LA is short 60 fire stations.
Yeah,
They've known
yeah,
that for years. That has nothing to do with Karen Bass, right? And
right.
yet there has
That's
been
right.
no move. Now it's probably going to get addressed. Now they're going to get whatever budget they asked for. Now they're going to get all these things. But
Sure.
we've known what the answer is for years and have done nothing about it. And so that is something that only goes away if we as voters quit tolerating that. And like
Yes.
how you actually communicate that to people has been a challenge of good government groups, of civic organizations, of nonprofits, of the media, of so many people. But it's like that is a particular, like that addiction to only solving problems in terms of once there's a crisis is something that is both uniquely American, but also like catastrophically difficult for us to figure out. And we have to, it's so urgent. So I won't be surprised that Karen Bass is recalled. I'm not going to say she doesn't deserve it, but
Yeah.
at the same time, like there was a bunch of controversies playing out, I think, on Twitter right now because people keep calling out Karen Bass, and then people are looking up how much water they've been using. Like the latest examples, like Khloe Kardashian, like called out Karen Bass, and the Kardashian family goes hundreds of thousands of gallons over
Oh yeah.
their county allotment, and it's just like so I also have a low tolerance for that. It's like people, it's like we also have to bear some responsibility. Not everybody. There are people who did absolutely nothing, to contribute. But like there's also a graphic going around social media that like the top 1% has already used up their like carbon allotment for the year, 10 days into the year. It's just like this
Yeah.
gross overconsumption is just absolutely outrageous, and we have to take it very seriously. It's a bit of a tangent, but you know what I mean?
No, it's the right thing. I mean, I have felt we have a mug in our house that's modulate your rage. And I feel like right now the rage is going in all directions, right?
Totally.
And the challenge with just blaming Karen Bass quite misses the point, which is climate change groups, firefighters, as you mentioned, have been saying this is going to happen for years, for
Years.
decades, right? And there were not enough fire trucks in the state of California to actually fight this fire appropriately because it was a fucking natural disaster.
Yeah.
Right? And this is just the new world that we live in now. When you don't invest, and this is again, this is where it breaks my heart when we continue to not bat an eye at Pentagon budgets. And then yet when we talk about the Green New Deal, and it's just like, it's too expensive. It's too expensive, right? It's too expensive. Meanwhile, this is the biggest fucking fire since like what was it, the Chicago fire in the
Yeah.
1900s? Like, and this
Oh,
is
I think even bigger. I think
even
even
bigger.
bigger.
It's even
Yeah.
bigger. And this is our new normal, right? This is not like, this is the sad state of affairs. This is the hottest year on record. It's going to be the hottest year on record next year. It's going to be even hotter next year. All of the sort of ingredients that led to this fire will get worse next year, right? And whether it's in California, whether it's in other parts of the country, um, public service, education, uh, funding, right, to protect communities. Um, this is the great experiment of democracy. And to your point, we do not value any of these things until it's too late. And it's, I don't know, not to sound super depressed, but I and it continues to add to the rage, right? It's, if you're talking about, speaking of social media, or you're talking about Fox News, this is a like layup for them. This is like, put it on a platter, right? Where they can point the finger at government failing the American people while simultaneously continuing to defund government programs
Yeah.
so that they don't work, right? And you can't have it both ways, right? You just can't. Um, and I hope that people see that. I mean, the GoFundMe's break my heart because the GoFundMe's are, um, again, it's not even a band-aid. It's almost like a fucking, it's revealing the safety nets and the insurance and the healthcare and the protections that families, and security that families should already have. You know,
Yeah.
that
Well,
is what
and
government
there's going to
should be
be
for.
and there's going to be thousands of them.
Yeah.
Like there's going to be like the level of impact is going to, it's just going to be so hard, and that people are going to be reduced to like having to win a popularity contest or like go viral to get their
Unbelievable.
GoFundMe to like get it's just a disaster. And the other thing about Americans is like the Americans are amazing. And so there's
Yeah.
already
Yeah.
like amazing resources that people are bringing to bear, and restaurants and food and places you can go for your clothes, and like,
Yes.
and yet it's also just like we need a little bit of both. Things are going to go wrong even with the best of governments, even with the best of plans. And
Yes.
so there's only so much you can prepare for. And I understand that. And yet we cannot rely on, or we shouldn't, to your point, have to rely on like the self-organizing of communities to
Yes.
fix problems that are worse than they had to be. Like the reality is that this fire is worse than it had to be. It was probably, it was going to
Yes.
happen. Fires
Yes.
happen in California. That is a reality that's been going on for centuries, not just some sort of new phenomenon, but the fact that they're getting worse, the fact that they're getting more severe, and that we haven't been set up for success around how to fight them is deeply problematic and troubling. And that, to your point, it's like, I mean, don't get me wrong, the government's doing things, President Biden announced that everyone will get a FEMA check of like $700. For some people, that's going to be really, really important. That's going to make a
Yeah.
difference in really substantial ways. Um, and yet it's also, we're talking about a years long recovery process. If you're able to rebuild, then fine, good luck with that, getting your permits, your labor, your materials, like all of that. That's going to be its own nightmare. If you're able to get insured again, which it's, now that they've passed some emergency legislation, that means you can't deny someone insurance in California for 1 year. So we'll see how long that lasts. But California's already in LA in particular, was already experiencing a housing crisis and a
Yes.
housing shortage. And so if your house just burned down in Altadena and you can't outbid your neighbor and you can't pay
Yes.
cash and you're waiting on maybe your renter's insurance policy, if you're lucky, to come through, like where are you going? Where are you going to
Where do you
go?
go? Yeah. Where do you go?
And it's just like the kind of, and $700 is not going to solve that problem.
Right.
And so it's the whole thing is just a total, it's just such a deeply complex and troubling thing, of which so many people are going to get left behind because of the way that we have a system that is just not particularly human centric. And this has nothing to do with the fire, but it actually reminded me of, did you see? I know I don't think we've ever even spoken about him, but Mr. Beast of YouTube
I am.
fame.
I'm very familiar with Mr. Beast. I will admit I do not watch any Mr. Beast content.
Yeah.
Um, I, I
But
always I always hear about his content like after the fact, but I've never
yeah,
really seen any of it.
same, same. But he apparently just did one of his like gimmicky things where he found 2,000 people and gave them prosthetic limbs that their insurance had denied
Yes,
them.
I did see this. Yeah.
And then at the end of the video, instead of doing like the typical like subscribe and blah blah blah, he was just like, "Isn't this is ridiculous that like
Yes.
people are getting life saving, life altering medical devices from a YouTuber? Like, what are we doing? You
Like,
know
what
what I
are we
mean?
doing?
Like, what are
Yeah.
we doing?"
Yes.
Um, and so I just hope that this experience actually clicks that in an enduring way, because it's just like, it just doesn't have to be like this. There's just no reason for it. But we just have such a low, in part because of the Fox News, in part because we've bought into this idea that government is incapable of doing anything useful. And it's just not true. And it's to our own detriment. Like we are just being so poorly served um, by this sort of anti-government propaganda, and having such low expectations, and that like we don't, and then it's not like corporations are stepping in. Like it's outrageous.
Well, no, I mean, this is the example, right? Where, um, and like I said, it's almost a perfect storm for those like you and I who believe in the power of government and public service. Um, because the times where there is a spotlight on these services that are critically underfunded, under resourced, overlooked, and at the same time, staffed. I mean, let's just talk for a second about 30% of the firefighters being incarcerated, many of whom are juvenile, being paid $5 to $10 a day. I mean, it's just,
It's outrageous.
it's just, I can't even, I didn't even know this. And I work in this line of work. We've done, documentaries and films. I was unaware um, of this. And it's so infuriating when at the same time our culture, getting back to our top 10 cultural figures of the year, all our culture so fucking glamorizes these bullshit artists like Elon Musk and these bullshit artists like Mark Zuckerberg. And yet, in times of crises, we are looking for heroes. We're looking for people who can be there to protect ourselves, can be there to help families. And unfortunately, what we read in headlines are Karen Bass to be recalled. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like it just continues and perpetuates this myth that, government is bad, billionaires and corporations are good, right? And so, anyway, sorry to go on a rant, but it's hard.
No, it's important.
It's hard not to be so demoralized by this right now. One, because of how devastating this is to real families. My friend Jeannie Mai, who's just incredible, has just almost every 5 minutes been posting GoFundMe's because she posted one family's GoFundMe. Jeannie is a host and she has, she's on talk shows. But what ends up happening is she posted one family's GoFundMe, and then, not a surprise, she just keeps getting more. So many families are just like, can you please share? Can you please share? Right? And it is heartbreaking because it is a popularity contest, And these are, to your point, these are families that didn't have anything to begin with. Like, we're reading about all of these celebrities in their homes in Malibu, but so many of the communities affected are, you're right, like, they're just never going to get this back. They're never going to be able to get back
Or
what
if
they've
they do,
lost.
it's a decade. It'll take people a
Yeah.
decade to recover.
Yeah. And if I'm a father, and, there's a GoFundMe spreadsheet right now of just teachers who've lost their homes. And there are hundreds on this spreadsheet of teachers who've lost their homes, schools that have been burned down. I mean, like, a decade, my kids are 10 and 9. So, okay, it's going to take a decade for my family to get back on my feet. That's my entire child's childhood right there, gone. You know what I mean? Like, it's so devastating. It's so infuriating. I imagine we can continue talking about the fire for the duration of this podcast, but I don't know. I mean, how are you feeling, Twig? Should we talk about some of the other? I feel like the DNC chair race is feeling a lot less compelling these days. I don't know.
I know, right? I know. But yes and no. It's like,
maybe not. Yeah, actually,
yeah,
maybe
yes.
not. Yeah.
I mean, I think everyone in politics is just feeling less compelling because you're just like, what the hell, you guys? But I would say the final thing is that Brad and I, for Twig and Jenkins, had come up with some merch that we were going to start selling, and we are going to continue to sell the merch, but all the proceeds will go to victims or impacted people of the wildfires. And so we're figuring all of that out. We haven't even publicized the merch, but we'll post about that
I think
soon.
we'll post it. We'll try to get this up ASAP today, and we'll include a link to the merch store. And Yeah, all the proceeds will go. I think Twigg is the LA organizer herself, so we'll figure out how best um, to use these funds. But it's very good timing. We were just doing the merch just for fun, but now hopefully some of that could be used for good. So
Totally. So there's that. Um, and then yeah, I mean it both my experience in this moment has been both it both makes the DNC race feel both really dumb and petty, but then also like incredibly urgent, right? Like
great
we
point.
actually just
Yeah,
we
sure.
don't have time to mess around anymore. I
Yeah,
want better political leadership. I want people to take them seriously. I want them to hit the ground running. I want to see implementation of solutions immediately. I want to like the wholesale rebuilding of the Democratic Party and the alternative to the autocracy that we're seeing on the right and the oligarchy that we're seeing on the right.
yeah,
Um, it needs to get into effect immediately. And so the DNC is a part of that. It is not the only part of that. And it's not the only piece that you and I interact with, right? In our day-to-day,
sure.
like private lives.
Yeah,
And so I was already due to come to New York anyway to speak at a particular conference. And so I just came a couple days early because of the fire. But like I'm already working with and talking to so many people about how we implement things that we need to actually build a meaningful and robust um, Democratic Party pluralist vision of what the future could be that both exists within the party structure, but also outside of it. And so um, it is kind of reinforcing the urgency that I feel about this work, but also like the standards. It's also raising the bar on these standards. Like I expect anyone
yes,
who's trying to get in the game right now to get serious, like be a serious person. And like you have a lot to do. And I'm not trying to hear nonsense. I'm not trying to hear BS excuses. Um, so yeah, so like I'm actually getting a little bit more flinty-eyed, I think, about the DNC race.
it's a great point. I mean, again, this is you and I talked about this obviously before this disaster, but all of these, this will just be the beginning, right? We're what, 2 weeks into the year of what we know will be a continual onslaught of propaganda, the right wing misinformation machine, Donald Trump and Elon Musk themselves, um, trying to convince the American people that government is bad. I mean, that's sort of the existential fight, right? Government is bad, and in large respects, um, the corporatization of our country and our leaders is great. It's great. It's ultimately good for the American people. And what we're seeing right here, I think, again, is this like very clear example. You had mentioned all of the insurance. Uh, how many was it? Twig? It was like 30,000 homes before the fire. I don't want to quote the wrong number.
Something to that effect, but essentially like State Farm and a handful of others essentially like, pulled out of the Palisades. Like we're just like,
Unbelievable.
and these are hugely valuable homes. I mean,
It's
10,
unbelievable.
20, 30 million dollar homes. So those insurance policies are really profitable unless you have to pay them out, right? And these insurance companies did the math and they believe in, it's like, who believes in climate science? Insurance companies.
Exactly.
And so they did the climate science, they did the numbers, and we're like, if we have to pay this out, it'll be the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Let's get out of Dodge.
Yeah.
And
It's
yeah,
unbelievable. And simultaneously, maybe this is an interesting segue. I'm not sure if you noticed our guy, Joe Rogan, um, your guy, Joe Rogan. I know how much of a fan you are of Rogan, Twig. Um,
notoriously so.
I believe he dropped the episode the day before the fire, or maybe 2 days before the fire. But Mel Gibson, blast from the past. America's favorite anti-Semite, joined Joe Rogan to just talk about how climate change is bullshit. They just went on a rant. They went on a burner for like 20 minutes about how it's all bullshit, right? And it's just this, again, just this, I feel like we're living in a simulation, you know, like just this world where Joe Rogan is mainstream media. This is the other thing
Yeah.
that I sort of want to unpack here, especially in light of Zuck's
Zuck the
boot,
cook.
just the bootlicking. I mean, just unbelievable bootlicking of Mark Zuckerberg to Trump.
Zuck the cook.
Zuck
Put
the
it on a
cuck
shirt.
and Rogan too. Like these are now puppets, right? Like how quickly these fuckers have gone from, oh, we're cool and subversive and we're in Texas. No, you guys are fucking cucks. You guys are fucking cucks. You are the arm of Trump. Like, how embarrassing is that? You guys are fucking embarrassing. You're just embarrassing. Like,
Yeah.
the fact that they can stand there and still give off this notion as if they're punk or as if they're cool, it's like, go fuck yourself. Like Zuckerberg, I mean, Jesus Christ, I can't even with that video. I don't even know where to begin with that video. And also all of these policy changes, which is just incredible. And I feel bad. I mean, pour one out for all of our Obama brethren, Twig, who were so captured by this idea that Silicon Valley was progressive, you know, not to go on a rant, but when I moved to Washington, D.C., Barack Obama ran on this idea that he was going to usher out special interests. He was going to ban lobbyists from the White House. He was going to change the way Washington worked. And the number one way that we're going to change Washington is we're going to get out corporate influences, special interests, billionaires buying our elections. Huge part of the platform of Obama in 08. And when we thought about the lobbyists that sort of infected DC, we thought of oil and gas, right?
Yeah.
We thought of the military industrial complex. We thought of Lockheed Martin and Boeing, and we thought of utilities, and we thought of
For-profit prisons.
for-profit prisons, right? Like these were the companies that we thought of, and these were the companies that we looked down on, right? As Obama staffers. Like, oh, this Exxon Mobil lobbyist, fuck that guy. He doesn't get a meeting at the White House. Meanwhile, fast forward 8 years. Where does all of the Obama appointees go to work? They don't go to work at ExxonMobil. They don't go to work at Shell. God bless. I mean, I guess we can give ourselves a pat on the back for that. But we all go to work. I don't want to say we, but many go to work. You and I did not, but many did. Many did. In fact, I think if you were to do a chart of like which companies did the most Obama White House folks go work at, it's got to be Meta, right?
Like, yeah, it's Meta, Uber, Lyft.
It's got to be Meta. It's got to be Meta. It's got to be Uber, Twitter when it was a thing. But because we were sort of hoodwinked to believe that these companies weren't as bad as some of these old sort of, you know, old school Fortune 500 blue chip companies. I would argue they're fucking worse.
Yeah.
Like,
oh,
I mean, it's
because they pretended like they weren't, you know,
yes,
for whatever,
yes,
say what you want,
exactly.
but Exxon's been very clear about who they are from the beginning.
Very clear.
These companies have been very clear about who they are. And it's like what was it? Was it Mark Zuckerberg? Was it the early Facebook motto of like, don't be evil? Or was that
Oh yeah,
Google or
that was
something? But it was just like there was this
bullshit.
whole thing of like tech optimism that tech was going to save the world and that these weren't just the same kind of rapacious capitalist, you know, D bags that everyone else was at least they weren't pretending, right? At least the
Yes.
other corporate titans weren't pretending that they were doing some sort of social good. And, we bought into that hook, line, and sinker. And it's really the
It's
enduring
really
impact
embarrassing.
of that is
Yeah.
really, really bad. And I think it's something that rightly we are judged, the Obama era is judged really harshly for. But it was like the Sheryl Sandberg,
Yes.
they just had such a good marketing campaign, the lean in of it all and the like
Yes.
connecting a world. And
It's devastating
um,
if you think
it's
about it.
really, really devastating.
Because think about all of that talent. Speaking of brain drain, think of
I
where
know.
all of that talent could have gone, you know?
And
Um,
I don't necessarily, don't get me wrong, there were people at the time that were like, you guys are being had,
yeah, true. I
there
agree with
was
that.
that voice was absolutely present as
Yeah.
while we were ignoring it. And yet it's become so evident. And I'm less judgmental about the people who joined the meta or the tech world in 2010, 2012,
Sure.
2016 than I am the people who are still there. And you're like,
Yeah.
okay, but that was 10 years ago, and a lot of information's come out since then. Like, what are you doing? Just getting super rich? Like, cool. All right, cool. That's
There's nothing,
embarrassing.
yeah, there's nothing against getting super rich, by the way. I have lots of friends who, great humans that work for one of the meta companies, whether it's WhatsApp or, Instagram, etc. The thing that hurts my soul though is I think that as we were doing, farewell parties at the White House for folks, there was this bullshittery that somehow working at one of these Silicon Valley companies was a form of service, right?
Yeah.
That they
Yeah,
were
totally.
using, that they're using, it's like, it's just a lot more honest, right? Back in the day, in the Clinton days, where, the Clinton White House guy would just go work at fucking Lockheed Martin. It was just like, okay, great. We
Yeah.
know what this is.
Yeah. I got
But
private school tuition to pay. Like,
exactly.
fine.
Exactly. And so
Yeah.
but that's all gone. I mean, that's all gone. And I think that
Yeah.
that is the one interesting thing. It's speaking of things being revealed, right? I think that what I found so striking is I watched a Fox News clip of in reaction to Zuckerberg's video, and it was fascinating, Twig. Even the Fox News hosts were like, fuck this guy. Fuck Zuckerberg. It was fascinating. They were like, where was this guy? Like, even the Fox News people are like, this guy is so full of shit. This
Yeah.
guy
Johnny
is
come lately.
yeah, this guy, oh, now he's gonna take out the tampons in the male bathrooms. Right? Like, are you fucking kidding me, Zuck? Like, just it's just embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing. And then on top of it, to put Dana White on the board of Meta, right? It's like how much do you want to suck Trump's cock? Do you want to do it like right now in public, or do you want to do it? Do you want to wait until
Later.
after the inauguration? You know what I mean? It's so oh my God, sorry, I'm getting fired up. It's just so infuriating because you're right. Like the Sheryl Sandberg, just this lionization that somehow, you know, Silicon Valley is here to save the world. Such fucking bullshit. They're here to destroy the world. It's just, it's just it. They're here to make us feel bad about ourselves. They're here to separate, alienate us. They're here to make us fucking pawns of late stage capitalism, and they're going to continue to do it, right? I mean, that's the really
Yeah.
scary thing to me is, you know, the TikTok sale, which will be interesting. Apparently, Elon wants in on that. Like,
Of course he does.
it's. I'm worried, Twig. I'm very worried because
Rightly so.
the roads and bridges right now, as we look at the devastation in LA, the roads and bridges right now is information, you know? And these motherfuckers control it, right? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, the New York Times, the Washington Post, all these things don't matter anymore because
Yeah.
Zuck and Elon and these motherfuckers, they control the roads and bridges. They control whether you even see the New York Times article. You know what I mean? It's fucking terrifying. So, oh man. All right, I'm gonna take a beat. Um,
No, it's so
take a
true.
beat.
Um, and yeah, man, it's but thankfully there's us and our
I know. Thankfully, thankfully,
thank
thankfully, thankfully,
no, it's gonna be
our rants on our podcast is clearly gonna save America. You know,
democracy.
sure.
Steve democracy. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
To switch gears, Twig, on the DNC chair race, there were a number of really great articles. I think right before the break, there was was it a New York Times piece or Politico piece that kind of broke down where things are. A lot of our interviewees obviously featured in the piece. It seems to be, as you predicted, Twig, seems to be a battle royale between our guy Ben Wickler and our guy Ken Martin. Ken Martin, who has not yet come on Twig and Jenkins, probably, I'm sure, his biggest mistake so far in this campaign. Let's just be real. Um, but what did you make of that article, and did you agree with the assessment of how it's shaking out? And like, I know you're talking to a lot of the DNC members. Is that how people are feeling like the race is shaking out?
I think that there's a little bit of I wouldn't be surprised if the Ken Martin team is sort of fanning the flames
Yeah,
of the Ben Wickler is captured by the billionaire class. Like, I'm actually not hearing that from donors. I think Ben's actually very
interesting.
popular, but
Yeah,
Ken is too, and Ken has deep relationships. I think that the anger at the establishment is so high right now that anyone who seems like they are the establishment candidate. And don't forget, these DNC members often serve for a long time. So I bet that
true.
there's a pretty sizable overlap between the people who voted in the last chairs race and the people who last contested chairs race and this one. So, you're probably talking about 60-70% of the same people who remember Barack Obama stepping in very decisively and heavily on
True.
behalf of Tom Perez. And while the DNC went with it, that also like put us on a path that I don't know how many people are happy with. And
Very
so
good point. Very good point.
right. And
There's
then
like trauma. There's like PTSD from that, I think.
Jamie Harrison has been DNC chair under President Biden. And when you have the sitting president, it's like the DNC chair escapes a lot of scrutiny because people get invited to parties and there's all this other stuff that's happening. But
Yes.
like Jamie didn't move to DC, Jamie didn't do this, Jamie didn't do that. And so I think that there's just a bit of an anti-establishment
Agreed.
sentiment happening. That said, it's like, what type of establishment, right? Ken is actually the person who's been around for the longest and has been an insider for the longest period of time. And so Ben is
Yes.
much newer and much fresher. And like his rebuild in Wisconsin has been a lot more recent. And so just because I think there are some people who back him is something that's really interesting. The question is really going to be how true that is and if Ben is in any way then beholden to those folks once he becomes chair. And I think that no one will be able to really, whoever becomes chair, I think would have a really hard time justifying bringing back in this latest campaign team as like high paid consultants or consigliaries or
Yes.
whatever. I think they're just going to have to start from scratch. And so I think Ben is clear eyed about that and is willing to say that openly. Then he'll
He
be
said that to
fine with
us.
yeah, then he'll be fine with DNC members. I'm not seeing a ton. I mean, granted, Ken hasn't come here and we haven't gotten a chance to meet him yet, but I'm also just not seeing a ton that I find particularly interesting or compelling. And I don't think that there's a ton of difference between him and Ben, to be
Yeah.
perfectly honest. So, from a platform perspective, um, so we'll see.
Yeah, we were invited to the DNC's first official forum, but was it Detroit?
It's in Detroit.
In Detroit. I mean, I love the Motor City, but I don't think I'm going to get on a plane
Ah,
to
I'm good.
go this week. I can't wait to watch it though. I'm sure that they'll make it available. I agree with you. I think that the articles have been interesting. I think that you know,
I
Ken's
think they're
team,
rightly calling out that it's all dudes, aside from Quintessa and our latest entry, Marianne Williamson.
God bless Marianne Williamson. Let's go. Let's go, Marianne Williamson. And all of you fucking DNC peeps, not even DNC peeps, just you pundits out there that are like, oh, Marianne Williamson can't run. It's like, get over yourself. I mean, we're in a place
Yeah.
right now where I'm willing to hear anyone who wants to run for the DNC chair race. Like, there's no monopoly of good ideas. And in fact, the DNC had no good ideas. So y'all need to shut the fuck up. Your time is over. Let this race play out the way it's going to play out. You know, like there's no need to be snarky as you're leaving, right? It's like, speaking of fires, it's like the DNC, it's a fucking dumpster fire and it was on your watch. So just let this go. You know what I mean? Like let this DNC chair race unfold the way it's going to unfold. Sorry, it's just my
No,
I
I
can't
completely
stand it.
agree. I'm stoked Marianne's in.
Me
I loved
too.
her presence when she was running for
Yeah,
president and the debates. Like she was the only person talking about reparations. She was the only person talking about bringing some
absolutely.
soul back to the party. And I think she was actually the first person to like really rightly and unapologetically call out how captured by corporatists the Democratic Party is. And no one was trying to
One
hear that.
100%. One
No one,
hundred percent.
yeah, no one was trying to hear that, but it's true. And it's just like she has a valid critique of this party that
Yeah.
a lot of the party members agree with. And so I'm
That's the
excited. We're
thing
going to
that's
talk to her, but I
surprising.
really like her.
I
You
love her
know,
too. I think it's surprising that there aren't more candidates like her, to be honest.
I know.
Because I do think it's an open, you would imagine that there would be more outsiders willing, you know, in in the wake of getting shellacked, you want new vision. You're right. You want new ideas. You don't want the same old, same old. Unfortunately, I think it has been a very boring conversation. You're right about, as much as I love all of the candidates that we spoke to, I haven't really found anyone that has truly excited me, to be honest. I don't know how
Yeah.
you feel. I think they're all competent, but I think what you and I have talked about, and Brad as well, Brad Bauman, like what's the wartime DNC chair look like, And I don't know. I just haven't seen that yet. Maybe it will start to materialize as we get closer to the election itself, but I haven't seen it. So
I'm just going to say it again for continuity. Jasmine Crockett, Jasmine Crockett, Jasmine
I know.
Crockett.
I wish that there was still time for, like, yeah, for someone
Why can't we have co-chairs,
sexy to
for
jump in there. Yeah,
I just think we're thinking about this too linearly, but whatever, fine.
I agree.
But so we have more candidates to talk to. I'm coming to DC in a couple days,
True.
and we are recording some podcasts. We're doing some interviews. We're having a goodbye to the Republic dinner. We are having um
It's gonna be
we're doing
really
a little
fun.
hang. Yeah, there's a
It's gonna be really
Spotify new
fun.
media brunch we're going to. Um,
It's
yeah,
gonna be really
obviously.
fun.
Yeah. Did you hear
Um,
it? They're giving out 250,000 tickets to the inauguration.
yeah, I mean, I'm fascinated to see how many people go, to be
Yeah.
honest. Um, I was invited to a Make America Healthy Again inaugural ball, which I
Yep.
found absolutely hilarious. I
Yep.
will not be
Yep.
attending. I will not be attending any inaugural balls. It's just not gonna. It's just not gonna
You're not
happen.
gonna Zuck. You're not gonna cook like Zuck.
I'm not gonna go to the Cuck Zuck ball, I believe it's called. Not gonna go to that one. No, I'm not going to any of that shit. And it's a bummer too. I'm still remembering those days, not to sound like an old person, Twig, but 2008, bro, those balls were so fun.
Fun. I know.
So fun. And but you and I are going to have a fun dinner. You know, that's
Yeah,
all that really matters. That's going to be fun.
it's gonna be
Should
so
we,
fun.
speaking of segue, Twig, and I don't know how much more time we have, but like, is it worth going through? We've not brought up President-elect Trump. I can't remember the last time we've actually talked about that guy. Maybe since he won.
Yeah.
But uh, you know, his ridiculous comments about the wildfire and Gavin Newsom aside, what is your take on this sort of transition moment, him gearing up to be the next president, his attacks on Canada, Greenland, what other countries does he want to invade? What is happening, Carrie Twigg? I just
Well,
I'm
obviously the Gulf of America.
the Gulf of America. Like, what is happening? This must be strategic, right? I don't know. I'm lost. I'm completely lost.
Based on what must it be strategic? Based on
Well,
what?
you and I have talked about how his strategery, if you will, to use an old George W. Bush euphemism, his strategery comes from his gut. You know, it comes
Yeah,
from
he's
intuition.
intuitive.
He's
Yeah.
intuitive. And this is some just wild shit. This is some like cosplay president. You know, it's like he's playing a video game and he's like, you know what I want is Canada. You know what we should do? Rename shit. Like what? What are we doing here? It's like fantasy football America. You know, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I don't know. I think it's I'm trying to put two and two together. Like, I think that it's clearly a distraction. I think if you are Steve Bannon, if you're Miller, if you're, the architects of Project 2025, I don't know that any of this stuff is helpful at all. Or maybe it is. Maybe a strategic distraction from like real actual policy changes that will happen. But
But I don't even know if distractions matter anymore because they told
yeah,
us what they were going to do and he got elected anyway. So I don't know that they think that they even need a distraction anymore.
true, true.
Like, why do they? I think this is just who he is. He's just like, F it, let's just own it.
Let's
Like,
just go.
why
Yeah,
should we have to buy rare minerals from Greenland? We should just have it.
yeah.
Ice caps are melting. We're going to need a stronger foothold. We want more of the Arctic Circle. Let's have Greenland, and Canada while we're at it. Like it's just like such, he's just because he's a little kid, because
He's a little kid.
he's got an elementary brain
Yeah.
and like he's also the president, so he gets to say what he wants. It's like,
He's got an
cool.
elementary brain is a great sentence. He's got an elementary brain. I feel like that can be on a t-shirt. Um, yeah, and I feel like he's testing. It's like I feel like it's almost like stress testing his media conglomerate because not a surprise, like the Fox News guys love it. They fucking because
Yeah.
we'll just eat up whatever. So they're like, well, yeah, I mean, this could be like the new Louisiana Purchase. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? You're talking about a military invasion of Greenland? Like, what are we talking about? What are we talking about here? Like, we were talking about the price of eggs, and now we're talking about invading Greenland.
So
And
maybe
like,
it wasn't about eggs. Yeah.
it wasn't about eggs. It's wild. It's wild. It's wild shit. It's great content. I mean, that's the other thing. You have to give Trump credit. It's like he kind of, I think he operates in this. Is it good content? You know,
Oh, totally.
it's like it's like he wakes up. He's like, it'd be good content. Canada we should own
Yeah.
Canada. It's great
Owning.
content.
It's great.
Oh fuck! Trump is actually Ryan said it. I was thinking of Ryan. He was our first guest. Remember that
Yeah. I
boozy
saw him in
episode.
LA.
Oh,
We had ramen in LA the other night,
God bless
um,
him.
right
God
before
bless
the
him.
fires broke out.
He said though he was like Trump is America's influencer. Like he
Yeah.
truly is. And because I
Yeah.
think we've always referred to him as a celebrity, right?
Yeah.
But he's not, but like celebrities don't matter anymore. Influencers do.
Yeah.
And like any great influencer, he's just good at content, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know what's next. It's like what what's the next country? What's the next rebrand? You know, Gulf of America sounds great. Sounds great
Sounds
to me.
perfect for my jet ski.
You know, sounds great for me.
Yeah.
It's great for the
Sure.
Daily Show. It's great for all the aggregators. It's great for
Yeah.
this content rich attention economy. You know, he's feeding all of us. Um, all right, so DNC chair race Twig. We've got what 2 weeks left. We have a number of candidates still to interview. Um, how are you feeling in general? Are you leaning towards any one candidate? I don't want to. Maybe we should wait until we interview them all before we start getting into that.
I'm ready to say I think Wickler's going to win.
You think Ben's going to win? Yeah,
I'm just
yeah,
not hearing a maybe it's because I've spoken to him and like he's identified with the show that I'm hearing more about him proactively from DNC
yeah.
members from around the
Same.
country. Um and but it just seems like I hear a lot more about him and it's such a small voting pool, you know?
Yeah, he's doing a really good job of. I think, especially in light of that article that was trying to paint him as, Reid Hoffman backed, White House backed, billionaire backed Ben Wickler. I think his social media very recently has been quite the opposite of that, which I found great. Um,
Yeah.
and so I agree with you. I think it's probably Ben's race to lose at this point. You know,
Yeah.
what about the DNC vice chair races? Is it worth going through how many? Oh, that was a question I had for you, Twig. How many of those vice chairs actually win?
I think
There's
there's
more than
four, but they're
four.
like
Okay.
they're like broken down by category.
Okay.
So my hometown congresswoman, Joyce Beatty, who I've known since I was 19 years old or 18
Wow.
years old. Yeah, she's given me some of the best career advice that I've ever
Wow.
gotten in my life. She's really special to me. And I would love to have her on the pod.
Yeah.
She is running for DNC vice chair. Our friend Josh Bernstein,
Yeah.
that's right, right?
Yeah.
He's running for DNC chair. Brad Bauman, friend of the pod, is running for DNC vice
Wait,
chair.
I didn't get that memo. He's running.
Yeah, right? Because he's been posting stuff.
I think he's running.
Or
I don't
did I
know.
not
I
read the
never got.
captions?
We should probably confirm, but I would assume that Brad is running, right? I think that's great.
Yeah.
God bless him. Shasti Conrad, also
Asti.
friend is running. She also got some big endorsements. Maxwell Frost just endorsed her a couple days ago, which is very cool. So God bless Shasti. And then of course David Hogg, right? David Hogue, sorry.
Oh, yep. Maybe he's not announced that he's running as I'm
Who, David
as
or Brad?
I'm sorry, Brad.
Oh, okay. Well, he's got to
So
get cracking here.
retraction.
Come on, Brad.
Yeah, retraction.
There's only a couple of weeks left.
Um, so we'll see, you know?
Yeah. Well, Twig will be back in DC next week. We're going to do our inauguration dinner with a lot of friends and journalists and incredible humans. We'll be recording with some of those names we just mentioned. Those are some hints at some guests on the pod. And then we've got a lot of stuff in store for y'all. I think that getting back to LA too, Carrie, talking to some friends in the entertainment world. It's an interesting moment for LA, I think. So it'd be great to have people on in the wake of the fire.
Yeah.
And yeah, Twig and Jenkins, we're gonna continue. We're gonna continue chugging along here, guys. I think that it's gonna be a slog, not to sound
What a chore.
it's good. No, I just mean America.
Oh
Not
yeah,
the podcast.
that
The
part.
podcast is going to be great. I
Yeah,
just
no, that
mean,
part for sure.
I just mean what's happening around us, you know?
Yeah,
And
totally.
so being able to find the the happiness and the comedy and the levity, I think, will become hopefully not too much of a challenge, you know?
Well, we have merch. We'll
We
let you
do
know
have
about merch
merch.
going to people impacted by the LA fires and more episodes soon.
More episodes soon. Carrie Twigg, I'll see you soon. And then we also got a great pod we recorded with our guy Yossi that we have to put out too.
Yeah,
So there's
totally.
a lot of really great stuff coming your way. For those in LA, we fucking love you guys. Um, please let us know. Speaking of GoFundMe's, I've been sharing a lot of GoFundMe's. As I mentioned, my friend Jeannie's been sharing them. I've been sharing them. Obviously, Carrie is in the thick of it, but um, for anyone who's a fan of Twig and Jenkins who's been personally affected, like, please let us know. Let us know how we can help, and we'll be back soon with cool merch. We didn't do the down on our dick merch though. That's the
Next
one we didn't
drop.
do. Next drop.
Next
Okay.
drop.
Next the next one.
All
All
right,
right, y'all.
thanks.
Did it.
Bye.
Peace. I couldn't tell how long we were going. We had been
I think
going
like an
for.
hour.
Okay. I should have had my